UK Advertising Export Group is a headline partner of the Phoenix Tribute, a virtual global celebration to lift the spirits of the industry and put creativity in the spotlight. A good fit for the UK Advertising Export Group, which is designed to take UK advertising global and to champion the UK as a global centre of excellence for advertising creativity, effectiveness, craft skills and talent in collaboration with our international partners. I'm Janet Hull and I'm chair of the group, and this is part of our summer showcase. It's a great honour and privilege to be on the main stage today with Keith Weed, President, Advertising Association and former Chief Marketing and Communications Officer, Unilever, the second biggest global advertiser and the world's most effective marketing company. I was delighted to read in the FT only last week that it has selected to make the UK its global HQ. It couldn't come at a better time for sustaining the UK's advertising reputation and heritage. Keith represents the very best of homegrown UK marketing talent. He's a senior statesman globally for the advertising business, named as the most influential Chief Marketing Officer in the world, 3 years running, 2017 to 2019 by Forbes, and awarded Global Marketer of the Year by the World Federation of Advertisers. No wonder he has 300,000 followers on Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn. And of course, he's a man who in his time has wielded a budget the size of which every marketer would drool over, be it Unilever Beauty and Personal Care, foods and refreshment and home care, whatever, with a total global marketing investment in brands like Dove, Knorr, Sunsilk, Surf, etc. in 2019 of £6.33 billion, a sales growth of 2.9% and an operating margin of 16.95%. What's there not to like about Keith and Unilever? Unilever has been around for 90 years. So it's used to operating through economic periods of uncertainty and emerging stronger. And while Keith Weed hasn't been around for quite as long as that, his successful marketing career has also taken us through downturns and upturns successfully. So who better to be discussing our topic for today in these unprecedented times, building back better, the future of advertising. So let's start first with looking back to set the context. Keith, as a former global marketer for Unilever, how did you make sure you consistently were accessing the world's best advertising and marketing services from your partner agency?
Well, look, thank you, because I think we all strive to do this, don't we? And we can't all be working with the best agencies. And of course, it's a competitive advantage if you can have better advertising and you can have more creative advertising. So for me, actually, it starts with your own team. It starts with the client. So number one is to make sure that your team are well trained and the expectations are set internally. So for instance, you need to make sure you do a great brief. I think putting a lot of work into a great brief and indeed a great briefing can make a huge difference to the advertising. So as far as a brief concern, I'm a great believer in having training and building capabilities, having really clear guidelines for the marketers on what is expected of them. So when they engage with the agencies, at least they have their act together, and at least they can stress to the agencies what they're looking for. So number one is it starts at home, and it starts with you and your team and setting the right standards. The second thing, of course, is working with the best people. You talked about agencies, but let's be clear, agencies are made up of people. You can work with a great agency, but be working with some terrible people in that agency. So whatever agency you choose, actually, when you get into that agency, you need to be clear. Are you working with Sally, Bill, Pete, Petra, or are you working with someone else? Because if you're not working with the people you want to work with, you'll find yourself in a very different situation, no matter what the name badge on the agency door is. And I think that's the most important thing for me. So even when I went through difficult time with our agencies, the first thing I do is look at our own team and their team and change people on the team, because I know there'll be other great people in that agency, rather than just switching the agency. Because you switch the agency, you can often go out of the frying pan into the fire, to use that expression. And I think it's not always the most marvelous solution, especially when you have a problem in your brand. Start with a brand new team. Which actually brings me into my third thought, is about continuity. I'm a great believer in continuity and working with agencies over time. I think with great relationships, you build foundations, and with those foundations, you can be more courageous, you can be brave, you can take risks, you can push ideas, you can experiment. If you're a new agency, new team, you are going to be a little bit more cautious, because what you don't know really is what's the appetite for risk or the appetite for creativity from your client. Having said all that, of course, you need to keep your toe in the market. You need to experiment on some projects with new teams coming up. There's always exciting people out there. There's new creatives out there. So make sure you have the capacity to do some experimentation. But to me, the recipe, great people in your own team, but make sure the expectations are there and they're well trained. Then spend your time looking for the right people in the agencies, the talent in the agency to work for. And then thirdly is to ensure that you have continuity. Don't hire and fire. Make sure you work with the agency over a period of time, build strong relationships, move people off if they're no good, but make sure that in a period of time, you have a collective knowledge so you can create some fantastic work.
Thank you so much for sharing that wonderful recipe for success. And it's so reassuring to have somebody in your position of, influence talking about long-term brand building, continuity of relationship as being essential factors in a strong marketing capability. So in your time at Unilever operating globally, I just wondered, how did you view the UK relative to the rest of the world? What were its strengths, and how did you make the most of these as part of international advertising and marketing campaigns?
Yes, of course, there are lots of opportunities to work with agencies and creatives around the world. And there are some notable centres that you'd want to go to. But there are also some countries which you wouldn't want to go to, which, without insulting them, might be very famous for other things other than creativity. I think what's special about the UK is that it is a real focal point for the creative industries, and the creative industries to its breadth. So whether that be filming and film production, whether that be music and the arts in general, and of course, most importantly for our subject right now, around advertising. And if you look at the sort of creativity and the output from the UK, and look at various measures around the world, and whether that be Cannes and being recognised in Cannes for your creativity, or indeed, of course, looking across at effectiveness and looking at the Effies or IPA, etc. You often see the UK more than hitting its weight. And what's important about that is the reliability. And as I said before, this notion about making sure you can get great talent, and there's talent in depth. So of course you can find a great agency in a country A, B, and C, but if you don't have the talent to depth through to production, through to actually making the great bit of advertising work, you will fall into all sorts of other challenges as you go through the project. So I think the first and most important thing is, for the creative industries and the advertising world, it's a good place to be. The second thing is actually it's a very developed digital market. So if I was going back to looking across the world in my previous job, you had United States, you had China, and then indeed you had the UK when you looked at the development of e-commerce and digital marketing. And so what you find is there's already a very developed and deep capability in the whole area of digital technology. And of course, things then grow around it. So there is a strong culture around startups and technology to support it. And I think this is one of the reasons why various countries around the world have tried to set up hubs for their regions to try and attract all the players. to make sure you then end up with this sort of focal point for the industry of greatness. As it happens, that has already been built in the UK over many years. So you have a real culture supporting creativity. So whether it be the sort of the creative side of advertising, delivering sort of effectiveness, whether it be a culture deep around creativity and the arts, or indeed whether it's around technology and digital, through to e-commerce and startups and tech. I think the UK ends up really being a place where we used to place a lot of our global teams in Unilever, and indeed then resource in the UK from the agencies those creative teams. And I think also one other thing I would add, which I know sounds ridiculous, but it really does make a difference. The fact that at midday in the UK, you can have a meeting with someone in China and someone in the US makes a huge difference for a global hub. You're not having to get someone in the middle of the night, half asleep, trying to engage with you. And that time difference just makes global working work across markets that little bit more. And we're all far too hardworking, and we're all far too sort of overstretched. And if you add on top of that tiredness, you're not getting people at the best. So you can get people at the best purely by that coincidence of the time working around the world by basing global teams in the UK.
Well, that's very heartening to hear. And it's certainly true that our creative industry's reputation far exceeds just advertising and is across the spectrum. And I think probably we are the world leader in understanding how to promote that. I mean, I've recently been involved in promoting CreaTech, which is the fastest growing segment of the creative industries right now. And I see that as being a world leader and something that's really going to drive us forward, particularly in execution and building creative standards when it comes to digital. So thank you. And also, we're lucky to be speaking English, and we're lucky to be geographically placed where we are near Greenwich Mean Time, right? Greenwich Mean Time is a godsend for us. So now moving on into your current role, admittedly one of many. I've been studying your CV avidly to prepare for this. As the president of the Advertising Association in the UK, what do you think are the most important things that the industry has been focusing on, and why are they important to the UK and customers around the world?
Well, I think at the end of the day, advertising has tremendous importance for the economy. I mean, it is funny that given that advertising spends its time building the image and credibility of brands, that it does such a bad job of building its own image. Because it's so often that advertising is sort of seen as a sort of the afterthought or the bit of promotion or whatever. But of course, as we know, great advertising starts with strategy. Great advertising starts with understanding your consumer and their needs, and getting real insight, and then getting real connection. And advertising, of course, right now is more important than ever, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, we forget. Consumers forget. Now, of course, you know your brand well, as indeed do your parents and your friends. But actually, over a period of time, people forget. And one thing that has happened through COVID-19 is one of the budgets that gets cut first is the advertising budget. And we've seen drops coming down. And although different levels depending on what media you're in, there has been a reduction quite considerably in advertising. And unless we get back on the front foot, when we start talking about getting the economies going again, one of the most important things will be reinvesting in advertising. So the first thing I just want to make clear is advertising is an economic lever. It's very important for brands and businesses to make sure that they grow and remain obviously healthy and bring in new consumers. But collectively, it's hugely important for the economy. Just using the UK as an example, that £1 invested in advertising delivers £6 in GDP, and there'll be a similar comparison around the world. So the first thought is that, but for advertising to be effective, it needs to be trusted. It needs to be something that is very much part of developing a relationship with consumers. And one of the real challenges that we've had with advertising has been the area of trust. And trust has been declining year in, year out, not just in the UK, but in other markets around the world. And there are multiple reasons for that. I mean, trust, even in TV advertising, was starting to drop, but this has actually been accelerated by digital. One thing that digital has enabled us to do, of course, is to put a lot more messages out on many different devices. And of course, we are also consuming much more media. In fact, the mobile phone being the big step change. The mobile phone means that in some countries, the UK, the US, people are watching 3 hours more media a day. And in that, of course, that means a lot more advertising. And if done well, of course, we can, through data, target people and make that more efficient for the consumer and for the brands. Done badly, it's bombardment. Done badly, it's excessive frequency. And we're seeing some of these things undermining trust in advertising. Now, the good news is we're not past that awful word, the tipping point. Advertising is still seen more as a good thing than a bad thing by consumers. But unless we address this as an industry now, we're going to find in the years that follow, we're going to have a real issue about advertising and trust with consumers. So one of the things I've been doing as president of the Advertising Association in the UK is very much focusing on rebuilding trust, focusing on how we can get trust in advertising back as a growth rather than a decline statistic. And we've also get engaged with other countries around the world, most notably the US, the biggest advertising market in the world, and discussing with the ANA and the 4As there, because they have a similar challenge. And can we share best practice? Can we understand how we can start building a better approach to advertising? So we are looking at things like how do we reduce bombardment? How do we reduce frequency? There are challenges, of course, around data and privacy. And we have a great program put together in the UK, chaired by ISBA and the IPA, who are leading this project on behalf of the industry. And what we're trying to do is now scale some of those insights so we can start making a positive impact on trust. And I'm really encouraged with the work I've seen so far. But like all these things, it's going to mean we're going to have to be tenacious. We're going to have to work on this for several years. But if as an industry we agree that without trust, we're nothing. As I've said before, a brand without trust is just a product. And advertising without trust is just noise. We really have to take this issue seriously. And I'm pleased to say the industry, certainly in the UK, is taking this issue seriously. And we'll have progress to report as time goes on.
And it was great to be, in the audience at the Advertising Association Lead Conference in January of this year, when we were still all together, and to hear that topic being the centre of the agenda. And in recent months, I know as a director at the IPA, we've been working with JICWebs on new technology for the distributed ledger technology pilot, which we feel is perhaps another way in which we can demonstrate transparency as we go forward. And we know that Unilever is a proud supporter of that. So we're very keen to be able to take that pilot forward to the next stage. So yes, trust, transparency, and working across borders in order to make this work, particularly in the digital marketplace. So now looking forward, thinking about the impact of COVID-19 and the phrase of this platform today, build back better. What do you think this means for UK advertising and what it wants to offer to the global advertising?
Well, I think this is a great opportunity to do things differently. I think we've all had a chance to reflect. We've all been working from home. We've all been growing very much longer hair. I have to say, I cannot wait for the hairdressers open. There's only so much gel you can put in your hair to grease it back. So I think there's lots of time to reflect. And I think this thought about how we're going to do things different and better is an important one. So from a UK perspective and the Advertising Association, one of the things we've been discussing with government is the importance of advertising to getting the economy going again. What you don't want to do is you don't have a double hit. You don't want to have the decline of the economy and then miss the bounce on the other side and keep going down, because that's going to put you out of business. So you want to make sure that you build back revenue quickly. If you don't build back revenue quickly, your costs are going to absolutely suffocate you. So within that perspective, we've been making a sort of proposal to government here in the UK to look at a tax credit around advertising as a way to stimulate the economy. Still ongoing conversations, but we've done a lot of really robust work making the case, and they are positively engaging in that. And I think it's particularly important for small and medium enterprises that have really sort of been buffeted and don't have the same resources as big companies. So that's the first thing I'd say, is getting back on the front foot and making sure that consumers are welcomed back into businesses, and we serve them well, and they are reminded that we're here and open for business. I think another area that I would love to see us address more is the challenges around sustainability, environmental and social sustainability, climate change, and much more. I think we've had a lot of lessons about the importance of risks and how big things can make big impacts. I think often in climate change, a lot of businesses have been talking about and watching what's going on. They haven't been quantifying and planning for the impact this is going to have on their businesses. I take carbon prices, for example. Some businesses, like Unilever did, had a shadow carbon price. A lot of businesses don't. In the not too distant future, there will be carbon taxes. If you haven't put carbon as a price into your CapEx proposals, for example, you're going to find that you have offices and factories built in the wrong places. So I think this whole idea of realizing that what we've just seen has really rocked us. Climate change could be just as significant and even more so. So I think finding ways of engaging on climate change is another area. And of course, what we've also seen recently is all the challenges around inclusion and diversity. And I'm pleased to say in the UK, we'll shortly be launching the Unstereotype Alliance, the UK chapter of the Unstereotype Alliance, which has been also launched in other countries as well. And I think that thought about how advertising can show to the world, but also most importantly to our consumers, what the real world looks like, as opposed to stereotypes coming from the 60s and 70s. So with this sort of agenda, whether it be climate and stereotypes and diversity and inclusion, or whether it be just in investing in advertising to get the economy going again, I must admit I have a quite optimistic view on the climb back out. It's going to take us a little while, but if we really focus on these big issues for the industry, I think we can actually make some positive progress out of these very challenging times.
And it's so interesting to see even publications like the Financial Times, who you would think of as being very commercially driven, coming up with a theme around profit with purpose as being the reset for the economy. So it actually amplifies what you've been talking about. And it's when you can get those sorts of influencers also agreeing with the marketers that it's the way forward, that perhaps we're going to manage the change that we're looking for. And Unstereotype Alliance, as I understand it, also fits with the United Nations global goals. So, here we are taking a lead yet again, a pioneer, as I think you have been in this area, leading the world in taking these things forward. So a fantastic initiative, as I understand it. And thank you for being the leader on that. So finally, what advice would you give to marketers listening about the best ways to work with agency partners around the world going forward?
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember we've all been through a very difficult time. So I think the first thing is to be tolerant. As you re-engage with agencies and partners, remember they've been through a tough time too. their business is not the same business that it was at the beginning of this year. And you're going to have a little bit of patience and respect. By the way, your business isn't the same either. So I think the idea of re-engaging with compassion, re-engaging with respect, and mutually supporting each other as we get onto the next chapter post-COVID-19. I think that's the first and most important thing. I think the second thing is to very much make the case to our companies and beyond for advertising and the importance of advertising to get the economy going and indeed our brands going. When the crisis hit, the first thing that happens is the CEO worries about his or her people and then about whether the business will survive, liquidity. And the CFO immediately jumps in and cuts the budgets. That's the right thing to do. You need to survive. But now the chief marketing officers need to step forward and make the case for reinvestment. Because if you don't reinvest, not only will you be hit by the decline, you'll then be hit further while your competitors reinvest and start accelerating past you. And I have some very good memories of those very difficult times around the financial crisis, where we made the decision, I made the proposal within Unilever to invest while others were pulling back. And back in 2009, when everyone was pulling back, we increased our marketing investment by 4.8%. The following year, around 14%. The 5 years that followed, we added another €1 billion in marketing and investment. And during that time, Unilever grew every year in revenue, grew every year in profits. And in the 9 years I was Chief Marketing Officer, we tripled our share price. And we're a soup and soap company, not a tech company. So the idea of investing when your competitors are pausing is a really interesting case study, and one I hope all marketers will engage in with their teams inside the businesses, and then be able to engage with agencies accordingly.
So I've been thinking about what you've been saying, Keith, and thinking about our topic, building back better. And I've come up with my 4 Ps that seem to represent what you've been talking about. So first of all, positivism. Be positive. Think about people, my second P, partnership and purpose. All of those seem to come through in what you're telling us. And I think it's a very good motto to help take us forward out of COVID-19. Just wanted to invite you to have some final thoughts in order to
let me just pick up on your point about positive, because I really believe that miserable people deliver miserable results. And we need to have a bit of fun. We're talking here to the marketers and advertising. You did not choose to go and be an actuary. You did not choose to be a banker. You chose to go into marketing and advertising. I think it's important to have a little bit of fun doing that. Now, I'm not suggesting you have to be 100% Tigger, but you don't need to be 100% Eeyore either. So I think we can all go back and try and think about it, about being a little bit more Tigger than you're feeling and a little less Eeyore than you're feeling. I think we can bring some positivity and restart economy and restart our brands and engage consumers, because our industry is a very special industry. And when it works well, it's brilliant. And I want it to work well in the years that come.
Thank you so much, Keith. Thank you, Phoenix Tribute. Thank you, UK AEG. What a brilliant session.
Thank you
so much.